Hey, FlimsyLunchTray here, and welcome to World of Warships for our Friday edition video, where we don't have a Friday-Saturday highlighted of a ship. It might be another week or two before that happens. But what I do want to talk about is something that happened with a new update, and that is high-tier operations. And I want to give you my first impressions and thoughts on having Tier 9 and Tier 10 ships in several of the operations in the PvE world, player versus environment world, here in World of Warships. As this was my first battle in doing this, and I felt like, well, Schlieffen would probably be a good brawling battleship to take here. So what we get is Raptor Rescue, which is basically we need to escort a Raptor out of the map, so to speak, or there's going to be a destination rendezvous point. We'll be taking an escorting Raptor to, being the Ranger is what the Raptor is. But then also we have several secondary tasks that will come along the way. Mainly, I think the four main ones are save the support ships, destroy carrier Hayato, destroy carrier Tatsu, and outrun Raptor and reach the rendezvous point first. In addition to the primary task being take Raptor out of the action zone. So amazingly, this op often fails because people just simply don't guard Raptor, or they don't get in between Raptor and the enemy bots, or they hide behind in the circle of healing, being a repair party circle. So for those of you who don't know, I actually really like playing operations. I always have for a very long time. I mean, originally most all operations were only tier 6, and then you had tier 7 Mirai, and then they went from tier 6 to tier 8. Generally speaking, majority of operations last year, I guess it was, maybe, when they brought the old ops back, like Cherry Blossom, Hermes. I feel like I'm spacing another one there, because I know they didn't bring back Operation Dynamo, but yeah, so that was great having that. It's kind of revitalizing the operations life here in World of Warships. But then now to have the tier 9s and tier 10s was like something really intriguing. I didn't participate any on the public test server when they were doing this, just because they just didn't have the time to be able to look more closely at that. But I have really liked the change so far. Pretty much all of the festive token grinding I've been doing with the World of Warships 9th anniversary has been mainly happening majority-wise in operations. Because it's nice. To me, it's a breath of fresh air in the sense of now I can try out new tactics. I can take newer ships, ships that might excel in different ways that maybe you don't have on some of the tier 6 and tier 8 ships. And of course, one of those things is you could talk about the funny buttons, the gimmick buttons that you have more, that's happening more frequently on the tier 9, tier 10 ships, and especially on the super ships. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to be interested to see how this shakes down. Now, in the terms of how I play Raptor Rescue, this is me figuring it out and kind of deciding what I wanted to do here. I don't go south to destroy one of the carriers. There's an enemy carrier that spawns in like the far right line of I9, H9, something like that. I decide I'm just going to take the traditional route because there's a lot of newer players now in operation, so to speak, and I just wanted to ensure the primary task of escorting Raptor out of the zone, because if Raptor gets destroyed, then this operation is an automatic loss. And that sucks. And so when you have to go deal with the carrier down the bottom right of the map, then you can't often get to Raptor in time to defend her from enemy destroyers or cruisers, battleships that are pushing in on Raptor. So with that being said, what else did I really want to talk with this? The main point of this video is just saying I like it. It's really good. It's quite fun. And to take some of you, maybe your more favorite ships, like I've seen a lot of players, I've been paying attention to YouTube and some of your guys' comments, and I had posted, I think, the battle results on the community tab on my YouTube channel, and several of you like really enjoying taking Schlieffen out, taking the secondary ships out, right? Even though Schlieffen doesn't have, a tanky armor scheme as much of like, you know, the GK or the Preußen as an example. You know, just her secondary DPM, her damage per minute, her torpedoes, the hydros, the heals, the fast damage controlled teams. As long as you angle well in Schlieffen, you'll do all right. But it's kind of interesting in how to try to do well with that when there are enemy ships that spawn in, you know, all different sectors and areas here on the map. So often when I'm playing battleship, cruiser, and I'm not having to go down south to take care of the enemy carrier down to the south, I like to try to lead further out in front of Raptor, because now you can see on the mini map we have, we know where Raptor is going next, and that's on D5. So we want to be able to lead the way, and we're trying to get some broadside shots on the cruisers. Either the cruisers spawn up here on A4, or they also spawn down on H7 and kind of back and behind there. And then you can already see that we have some enemy ships appearing on I2. So there's a lot of action that can be happening all over the map here in operations. And I think this is a win in many ways to have the tier 9 and tier 10s. In operations as well. I mean, granted, Narai and maybe there's one other op. I should have probably pulled that article up before I started recording, where you can't take the tier 9s and tier 10s into, so they excluded those. And with Narai, I can kind of understand everything's kind of quite orderly, and you could probably like farm a lot of damage. That's been the op that I've been able to farm the most damage out of ever in terms of only tier 6 to tier 8 ships among the many operations here in the game. But it's a win for the PvE crowd here in World of Warships that I feel like maybe Wargaming, it feels like, I'm not saying this is actually factual, but it feels like at times World of Warships, Wargaming don't really want so many players playing the PvE world, you know, the co-op. I mean, only was it 2 years ago that they finally allowed operations to count for the dockyard grind, but then, you know, most of those missions and tasks are only half of whatever you do in ops counts towards the progress. There's a few exceptions, but majority of those combat missions, if dockyard's on it, you know, only half of your progress counts, like your damage, your main battery hits, whatever, so on and so forth. So it's been a nice investment for Wargaming to kind of step and kind of cater more to those here in World of Warships who don't really like the PvP world, and having to deal more with, I guess, you know, there's a lot more, if you want to talk about toxicity in the game, right, in terms of chat or other things, you know, it's often much more regularly occurring in your PvP randoms, ranked, you know, the two classic examples. So if you really want to unwind and enjoy the game, you know, just playing co-op, playing operations is a really great place to come into. So I feel like it's definitely a win for the PvE crowd. And the second thing I would say is very much a win is, you know, for those, it was nice when they opened up operations to tier 6 to tier 8, but now to have tier 9 and 10. So, you know, if there's a tier 9 ship you want to grind, you don't have to go to randoms or ranked. You don't have to only do that in co-op. You know, if you're really hardcore on the PvE side of things, right, and you just don't want nothing to do with randoms or nothing to do with ranked, you know, now you have the ability to grind your tier 9 ships in operations. You know, and ideally that's going to be awesome, right? But then coincidentally, and it's really hard to like say, did Wargaming do this on purpose or not? You know, because they don't seem to understand their own spaghetti coding at times. But, you know, that they open up high tier ops and then like, shoot, somehow we allowed this bug into the game that has nerfed your base XP that you can earn in operations. So now you're getting less rewards, you're getting less base XP. It's making it, you're not able to grind the ships as fast as you normally would be able to if it weren't for this quote-unquote bug or whatever you want to call it, right? It's hard to say what was, was it intentional or was it just pure coincidence, right? It's hard, you know. Sometimes I feel like the more I play this game, I'm worried, not worried, but like feel that I'm maybe putting my tinfoil hat on more at times, but also at the same time, this is Wargaming we're talking about. But the main point being, the idea is that it's just going to be greater for, again, for the PvE crowd. that you can grind your tier 9s in operations, or those certain tier 10 ships that you still have to grind certain modules on. I think like Shimakaze, like you still have to earn, you know, XP, or of course you could use free XP to unlock the 12-kilometer torpedoes and the 8-kilometer torpedoes. So maybe there's some grinding you have to do on some certain tier 10 ships. Very few, most tier 10 ships have all the modules necessary, that you don't have to upgrade there at all. I think those are the two main takeaways in my mind, at least, when talking about, you know, kind of what's the wins here. You know, win for PvE. It's more consistent with grinding, because typically, as long as you don't, you know, the op doesn't go south really fast. I mean, typically most operations, you know, you can guarantee the win, so to speak. Weekends can be a little bit more of a question mark, so maybe you go in with some buddies or some clanmates that you can play operations with and know that you will indeed get the win. And maybe the third point of it just being like, it's just something new to the game. It's a breath of fresh air versus, you know, kind of what has always been the norm here in the game in World of Warships. So that being said, you know, I guess those are the three main takeaways I would have, and my first impressions is really positive thus far towards having the higher tier ships here in operations. I hope Wargaming, if they haven't already fixed the bug, I don't think they have fixed the bug if I remember correctly. At least when I was playing the other night, it didn't feel like it in terms of the base XP values that I was getting here in the game. But maybe that's incorrect and they have fixed it. The video from Wednesday of interacting with y'all there, but I just had my parents just left Tuesday to go back to the US, and then I now have two guests in Mrs. Flimsy and I's apartment, and then it will just be one guest after tomorrow for roughly just over a week, almost 2 weeks, something like that. So because of the hosting, I haven't been keeping up with all the little details of what's been happening in the game, so I feel like in some ways I'm kind of behind on certain facts or information here in the game. But then concerning the festive tokens, you know, the anniversary event, it was great. A lot of you watched that video, so it seems like there's a good number of you who also like opening up the containers one at a time. Then there are others who just opening all of them collectively together. So thanks for everyone who's been engaging with that video and working with y'all in the comments there as well. So it's going to get close to me dying here, because you remember how I was talking about Schlieffen works really well when you angle? I mean, granted, we just bounced a lot of those Satsuma shells, and we're lining up the broadside salvo with 346,000 damage to 408,000, and then we're going to dump all of our torpedoes here into the Azuma. But the Amagi can also smack with those 410mm guns, and that is what's going to cost us our life. But not before we end with what's ticking and going to be over 500,000 damage, because I think we had a fire on Yoshino from the looks of things. Or maybe it was the Amagi. I don't remember where the fire was at. Yeah, I think it was the Amagi. So then we're going to watch our fellow comrades finish the operation out here. So with that being said, we'll keep letting this go so you guys can see the op finished. You can see the primary task, secondary task on the left side of the screen. If you're newer to operations, there's a few things I'd want to say. One is, if you like playing ops with others, one of my clanmates, Forgotten Void, he has a YouTube channel, Operations with Void, I think is what it's called. He has a YouTube channel, check him out. He's got a lot of helpful things there. He's probably going to have a lot more videos coming out with the higher tier runs in 9 and 10. But he has a Discord server. If I remember to, I can put the invite link down below. So if you want to talk with others, learn from others, division up with others in playing operations, I think most of them are on NA, but there are maybe a few there on EU, and Uneven Void himself is also on the Asia server. Yeah, there as well. Also, if you're newer to operations, just make sure to pay attention to your primary and secondary task. A lot of times I see the newer players struggle with the primary task of certain operations because like you can't fail the primary task. In most situations, not Aegis, like everyone could die, but as long as the transport support ships get to the rendezvous point, you're good. But again, a secondary thing with that is most of the times I see players struggle with just escorting a ship that you're supposed to protect. For example, here in Raptor Rescue, it's Ranger. So make sure you're out leading the way in front of Raptor, Ranger, that you're not hiding behind in the repair circle. Many people do that here on Raptor Rescue. Then you also have Hermes, where you have the French battleship. I don't remember what it is even now, what they replaced it with. I see a lot of people, they don't actually get out in front of the French battleship to escort it, especially at the end when you have some destroyers running up. And then could possibly, if you don't take the torpedo aggro 4, I think it's the Ruan, R-U-A-N, for that French battleship, then of course that's an instant loss right at the very end of the operation. So just make sure if you're to escort, you're doing it well, you're protecting the ships. Otherwise, in general, operations can be quite straightforward. You know, the more secondary task you achieve, then the greater, you get more stars, which translates to getting more base XP, which translates to more credits, experience, so on and so forth. As this one, we only get 4 or 5 stars because we didn't get that carrier killed right at the very end there. But otherwise, complete success here in the operation, even though we died, but we had to get the job done and running up on that battleship group moving in on Raptor. So 503,000 damage. With a lot of secondary ribbons, over 620 with the 12 citadels. That's nice. Some of those Japanese battleships like the Yamato or Satsuma, have a pretty vulnerable citadel if you're able to run up on the broadside, especially like the Yoshinos and the Azumas here as well. We're going to top the team with almost 1200 base XP. Our Minotaur friend did quite well in addition to the black. So if you're new to ops playing, just pay attention maybe what some of other people are doing who seem a little more experienced, and you'll do just fine as long as you're focusing on achieving those primary and secondary tasks. Here you can see the damage done. I think on Satsuma we did like only 5 AP shells did that much damage because of the Citadel value, with over 109,000 damage we took, with 800,000 spotting damage, and our secondaries did 161,000 damage. So that's, I think, just in general, the Shifen does just a really good job in just really pumping out the damage here in the game, because she's built for operations, but she's very much built for brawling. But as long as you angle, you're fine. Where, when you're running up on 3 Japanese battleships, then the Yamagi smacks, you're quite vulnerable in the Schlieffen. With that being said, so first impressions, great, really excited for this. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below on your impressions of the high tier operations. Let me know if you're newer to operations as well, now that you're able to take the tier 9s and tier 10s here into the PvE world of World of Warships. So that being said, if you liked today's video, give a thumbs up. If you didn't, give a thumbs down. Subscribe if you do want to see more. If you have subscribed, thanks so much, I really appreciate it. Thank you to my Patreon supporters, and until next time, take care.